Okay, so here are some examples of how, now that you know how it works, let's show some use cases. So this is a simple use case and actually a very ugly use case, but it's the general idea. So here, I have a bunch of links, right? So here it says A before, and I say make the color white, make the background color black, increase the font size a bit, give it some padding, display it inline block, because inline block, then I can give it width, and then I give it margin right, and because it's inline block, I can also text align it within that block. Notice that there's one, the only required attribute is missing from this. And the reason that I don't put it in here like a default value is because if it doesn't have content, I don't want it to have a black box in front of it. If I have a link with that doesn't match any of my predefined links, I don't want to have a black box, an empty black box. That would look tacky. So here, in my link, anyone want to tell me what that reads? Now that you guys know these?
Starts with mail to.
Exactly. Any link that starts with mail to, before it, put this character, which happens to be this little mail icon. This one starts with telephone. And anyone remember what this means?
Okay.
Ends with, right. So ends with VCS. So that's usually a calendar thing. I couldn't find a calendar when I was doing this because I just put a clock. I'm sure there's a calendar icon, I just didn't know what it was. So the content will only appear if there is content to appear, right? And this way, you guys know that this is a mail to link. If this had just said email me, I wouldn't have known that it opens up that icon is a visual indicator that might be an email link. It's progressive enhancement. Just because someone that has IE7 doesn't get that, doesn't mean you can't include it, right? Because it adds content. It's not like the page is inaccessible without it. So here, what does this say, anyone? Any element that begins with HTTP on hover only, make it position relative. And why do I make it on position relative? Because my hovering thing is position absolute. And if it was not relative, it would be right up here. It would appear here. So here, nothing happens because this is a relative link. And this is an external link, right? So the styling for that says the content should be the href attribute. The position should be absolute, 1em from the top. And the reason that it's 1em from the top is so that it's underneath it, right there. And notice that I'm hovering over this, and it's still open, because I'm still hovering over the element, because the generated content is inside that element, right? Left 0, that's why it's aligned on the left. Background color is black, foreground color is, or text color rather is white. There's a teeny bit of padding, and line height is 1. Because it's positioned absolutely, I can give it line height. It's no longer an inline element, it's a block level element, right? When something's positioned absolutely, by default it's block. So the question is, why did I wait till hover to make it position relative? The reason is, when you make something position relative, it basically, and you try to put something over it, it will shine right through. So if all of my links, I'm looking for a page with links. Well, these are not going to hover over each other. But if generated content was right up here, and this was position relative, the tooltip would come right through, because the z-index has its own, I forget the word. So that's why you put relative just on hover, so it doesn't shine through. This is one of those things, I'm telling it to you now, it might not make sense. When you hit this bug, I just saved you like 5 hours of time. So just to remember, something relative is bad. So that's why you do it on hover. Okay, so here, more use cases. Here, I have a block quote with 2 paragraphs in it. And I say block quote before and after. I want it to, the generated content to be 2 ems, brownish, line height is 0, vertical align middle. And then the first child, the P that is the first child only, before, put the opening quotes and move it 40 pixels over to the left. And right after the last one, and this is going to be in line, right? Because I didn't say display block. So it's just there in line, but I'm moving it over 40 pixels because it's, because if I put anything else after that, then it's basically, it's a font sizing thing. So I moved it, I want it on the outside, and that's why I put this -40 right there. Simple use case. Another simple use case of generated content is triangles. Triangles are awesome, and they're kind of hard to do, right? You think? They're really, really easy to do. There's nothing simpler than creating a triangle. And I'm going to go create a triangle in one of our pages right here. Before, there's not going to be any content. And this is totally going to break because I'm live doing a demonstration, so it's not going to work. But width is 0, height is 0, position is absolute, border is 20 pixels, solid red. Okay, there I have 20 pixels by 20 pixels by 20 pixels by 20 pixels, right? And then if I do border, so if I do transparent, you saw where the room it takes up, right? So instead I'm going to do transparent, and you don't see anything because it's transparent. Border, left, color, red. And that's a triangle. If it was bottom, you're like, sweet, that was easy. Okay, so triangles are so ridiculously easy. And the other thing I can do is I can do like 20 pixels, 10 pixels. If I can also do this, border width, 20 pixels, 5 pixels. And that way you can start getting really weird shapes. And I'm just going to move this over to 40, so it's or 100. And 50 right there. And then I'm going to move this down to 20. So you see how I'm making it narrower? Like that? But if I do border left, it's going to be really wide. Right? So you can make all sorts of different triangles. That's how you make triangles in CSS. You use generated content. So triangles are kind of helpful for quotes. So this is a quote, as you can tell because it says quote. And I just put a border radius of 10 pixels. And then after it's, I positioned absolutely height 0, width 0. So why did I do height and width of 0? So that it has a point. Because of the box model, right? If it actually had height and width, you'd have a trapezoid. Border 20 pixel solid transparent, border top color red. And that's why it's this way. If it was bottom, it would go that way. And then I moved it down to the bottom. So off from the bottom, it's 39 pixels, which is weird. I don't know how I came up with, and 20 pixels from the left. I have to try to remember why I came up with 39 pixels. So let's cover a few more, and then we'll do a little exercise. So this is another one, a thought bubble. Border radius 50%, and we'll cover border radius later, but basically makes a circle or an oval. And then I make two little bubbles after that. So I put a before and an after. I declare both of them to appear the exact same way, right? Content is empty, position is absolute, and a height and width. Oh, I also I put thought before and after, so all three of them look the exact same with a 5 pixel blue border, radius of 50%, background color white, and position is relative, because this has to be relative so that the generated content is positioned absolutely relative to that parent, right? You guys know this, right? If you position something absolutely, it is positioned relative to its ancestor that is positioned. So it won't be positioned relative to its parent if the parent is static. It'll be the grandparent if the grandparent is relative. And if nothing is declared on any of the ancestors all the way to, it'll be relative to the body. So that's why generally when you see something positioned absolutely, the parent is always positioned relatively. So that the child is positioned absolutely relative to its parent. Does that make sense? Did you guys know that? People are like, I have no clue still what you're talking about. Do you guys understand the position pretty much? If not, we'll talk about it as a side thing during lunch or something. Okay. So, before, after, okay, so here we are. All of them are white with blue borders and round. The two after, the before and after, I put empty content, positioned absolute, and this is the height for the big one, and this is the height and positioning for the small one. I just moved it lower and made it smaller. Can you use this now? If someone with IE7 uses this, it will say this is a thought bubble, and it will have a 5 pixel blue radius. It will not be round, but the content will be there, and it will appear there, and it will take up the same amount of space, and it won't have the 2 dots below it. And it's WTFC, which is WTF cares. And I'll try not to swear on camera. So again, Chris Coyer. So he did this thing where he just did bunch of shapes. So these are all pretty evident how they're done, right? We showed you how to do triangles. Showed you all of these triangles. We explained how to do a trapezoid. When your width isn't 0, you get a trapezoid. You can use skew, but that's transforming. But star. You can do stars of many ways. This is not how I would have done, like to do a star, I would have used a before and an after. Like if I wanted a Star of David right next to something, I would have just, put my div and then put a before of a triangle going down and after triangle going up. And that way I would have had content instead of useless, but it's pretty much the same thing. This one is way more complex than I would have thought. He is actually transforming it, so he is rotating it, and that's how he did a 5-pointed star. And he used both before and after. A pentagon is a trapezoid with a triangle on top. It's actually good that this site is partially broken because that way you can see what he actually did. So here is a box, just a div with the background red, triangle above it, and triangle below it, and you have a hexagon. Octagon is a box with a trapezoid above it and trapezoid below it. Heart is 2 circles and a triangle. Okay, so he's done every single possible shape you could want to do. We have Pac-Man. Oh, and look, his talk bubble is very similar to mine. A pointed burst, which is just a square with another square with another square. I do have a whiteboard. Okay. One thing I want to cover, and I have no clue if I cover this anywhere, but I talk about it later. So I'm going to do it here. So P display inline block background color is red. Okay. So I want to create something that is the exact same height and width of this, but I have no clue what the height and width are. This is my challenge. So content is empty. Position is absolute. It's spelled correctly, very important. And this has to be position relative, right? Position absolute, top 0, bottom 0, left 0, right 0. Background color green. And you won't see any of it because the red is on top, so let's just make this transparent. And that failed miserably for some reason. Why did it fail? I have no clue. I'm going to show you later on then when I actually have an example. I'm not going to waste time doing that. But basically, when you want an element to be the exact same size as its parent, you know what? Oh, now it got deleted, so I'm not going to rewrite that whole thing. When you want something to be the exact same size as its parent, you put the position, you position it absolutely, and you give it a top of 0 and a bottom of 0, because basically that will stretch it to the height. And then you put a left and a right of 0, and it'll stretch the width. And that will make it fill up its whole parent, because otherwise, an absolutely positioned element has no size. And when we do transforms, everything in transforms is actually done with generated content. So everything looks like it's the same size, and you can't tell that it's done with generated content, except for I told you. So who here, oh, let me just do one more run through of ideas. And this is Chris Coyer's other ideas. And he grabbed some of them. So this is what I said. I won't cover that. Here are his shapes. Clear fixing. Anyone here use the class clear fix and have no clue what it does? So clear fix, what it does is it puts generated content, displays it block, and clears it. So that way you have a tiny little block level element, and you can clear whatever it was without adding something to the page. You can simulate float center. You can, all of these icons here are done with generated content. This is a really good example of generated content. So here you have a tiny little window, mobile portrait, mobile landscape, tablet, small monitor, and large monitor. So with media queries, you say the generated content, when it's a tiny little device, don't put any generated content. If you have a small device, like mobile landscape, put a tiny little icon. If you have a tablet, which gives you more space, put the actual word email. If you have a small monitor, you can put the email address after it and use the href attribute. And if you have a large monitor, you can put the icon and the email address. Why not? So that's a good use of generated content and progressive enhancement and media queries. Let's see if he has other good examples. We have the pull quotes, I'm sure, coming up. Oh, here he did one. He has a banner, and then with generated content, he makes it look like a ribbon. Styled numbers in ordered lists. You can actually style the numbers. Oh, that's a new one. I didn't see that one before. Your mom is hot when you hover over it. And that's basically very simple, similar to the example we're going to do. So we're going to do the your mom is hot example right here, except for it's not as entertaining. We have generated content when we hover over it. And when you click on this, all it does is open this in a separate window. So it's really not, but why don't we spend about 10 minutes? And so do click on it and do a view source, view page source. Ignore the top, don't read the top, just copy the bottom, and then try to come up with your own top as to how you would do it. There's many different solutions for this. That is just mine. But as you can see, this might actually be a good time to show you. Oops, let's just click out of that. I'm trying to exit presentation mode, view, exit presentation mode. And let's get rid of that. Okay, so here, wow, this is a huge window. So this is where that thing comes in handy, because here, when I open up generated content, you see that text does not come through. So I want you to code this page, do the CSS for it, and make it so that this word tooltip works on hover, but that it doesn't come through. Remember, I'm going to actually code it. Hold on, because I'm just getting too many blank stares. So let's just code it together. Do you guys want to do this as an exercise on your own, or do you guys want me to slave labor up in front?
Slave labor.
Slave labor.
Okay.